Outside, snow fell in relentless sheets, burying Chicago in white silence. Inside the 42nd floor boardroom of Hawthorne Capital, Victoria Hawthorne made a decision colder than the storm itself. One employee, one snow day, 9 flawless years of service. Daniel Brooks asked for a single day off to watch his daughter perform in her winter recital. Victoria denied it. The next morning, she fired him for not showing up. That evening, under crystal chandeliers and falling snow, she saw him laughing seated beside her billionaire father, and in that moment, the temperature truly dropped. The glass conference room on the 42nd floor hung suspended above Chicago like a frozen judgment chamber. Snow pressed against the windows in shifting waves, turning the city below into a canvas of white and gray. Inside, the air itself seemed colder than the storm outside. Victoria Hawthorne stood at the head of the table, her charcoal suit sharp enough to cut. Behind her, the city disappeared into the blizzard. Before her, 12 department heads sat rigid in their chairs. Revenue projections are down 3%. Her voice could have frozen water. Unacceptable. She clicked to the next slide. Red numbers glowed against white background. Marketing failed to deliver the campaign on schedule. Operations missed the shipping deadline by 48 hours. IT took an extra day to resolve the server migration. Victoria's heels clicked as she walked the length of the table. Each step measured, deliberate. Hawthorne Capital is not built on excuses. It's built on execution. She stopped, surveying the room. We are a precision instrument. Every part must function flawlessly. The moment one gear slows, the entire mechanism fails. Thomas from operations shifted in his seat. Miss Hawthorne. The shipping delay was due to the snowstorm. The roads. Nature doesn't care about our deadlines, Thomas. Neither do our clients. Victoria cut him off with surgical precision. That's why we build contingencies. That's why we plan ahead. That's why we don't wait until a blizzard arrives to address supply chain vulnerabilities. She returned to her position at the head of the table. Policy dictates performance. Performance dictates success. There are no exceptions for weather. No exceptions for personal circumstances. No exceptions, period. The room stayed silent. Victoria had built this company from her father's modest investment firm into a billion-dollar enterprise. She'd done it through discipline, through unwavering standards, through the absolute refusal to let emotion dictate business decisions. Dismissed. The executives filed out quietly. Victoria remained, watching snow accumulate on the window ledge. The storm had been forecasted for days. Most companies had already sent employees home early. Hawthorne Capital hadn't. Hawthorne Capital never did. She opened her laptop. 43 emails waited. She began answering them, one by one, with the same cold efficiency she brought to every task. Outside, the city shut down. Inside, Victoria's world ran like clockwork. 16 floors below, in a windowless office filled with the hum of servers and the glow of multiple monitors, Daniel Brooks worked under fluorescent lights that never changed, regardless of the weather outside. Daniel's office was small, barely large enough for a desk, 2 filing cabinets, and a chair that squeaked when he leaned back. The walls were blank except for one decoration, a crayon drawing of 2 stick figures standing beneath a smiling sun. The taller figure wore a tie. The smaller one wore a crown made of stars. At the bottom, in careful 7-year-old handwriting, he'd taped it beside his monitor 9 months ago, the day after Emily's mother had called from California to say she wouldn't be returning. Not this month, not next month. The words, "not a good fit for motherhood right now," still echoed sometimes in the quiet moments. Daniel pushed the memory aside and focused on the spreadsheet in front of him. Data analytics for the 4th quarter. Numbers that told stories if you knew how to read them. He'd been reading them for 9 years. 9 years without a single sick day. 9 years of arriving early and staying late. 9 winters of trudging through snow to reach this building. To sit in this chair. to ensure that Hawthorne Capital's data infrastructure ran without a single error. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen, his neighbor who watched Emily after school. She's practicing her song. Won't stop. Says she needs to be perfect for you. A photo followed. Emily, in her living room, arms spread wide, mid-performance. Her smile could have powered the building. Daniel smiled back at the screen. He typed, "Tell her she's already perfect. Be home by 7. But that was the problem, wasn't it? He was never home by 7, more like 8:30, sometimes 9. Emily would be in pajamas by then, fighting sleep to tell him about her day. Tomorrow was different. Tomorrow was the winter recital at Lincoln Elementary. Emily had the lead role. She'd been chosen out of 76 second graders to play the winter star, the character who brings light to the longest night of the year. She'd been practicing for 3 months. Daniel had promised, truly, deeply promised, that he would be there. He glanced at the drawing again, the stick figures with the sun above them. She'd drawn that on a Saturday morning while he made pancakes. She'd asked him, "Daddy, when you're at work, do you think about me?" "Every minute," he'd told her. "Then why are you always there?" The question had no good answer. Bills existed. Rent existed. Food and heat and the small violin lessons she loved, these things required money, and money required work. He looked at his calendar. Tomorrow, December 18th. The recital started at 2 p.m. His hands hovered over the keyboard. He opened a new email. The cursor blinked in the empty space. Outside his office, he could hear the wind howling against the building's steel frame. The storm was getting worse. The Weather Service had upgraded it to a blizzard warning. Tomorrow would be chaos, roads unplowed, transit delayed, half the city staying home. But Emily would be on that stage at 2 p.m., singing the song she'd practiced in the mirror, wearing the silver dress Mrs. Chen had helped her pick out, looking for her father in the audience. Daniel took a breath. Then he began typing. Subject: Time off request, December 18. Miss Hawthorne, I am requesting 1 day of personal leave for tomorrow, December 18th. This will be my first absence in 9 years of employment. I have completed all pending projects ahead of schedule and documented step-by-step instructions for any urgent matters that might arise during my absence. I understand the timing is challenging given the weather forecast. However, this is a non-negotiable family commitment. My daughter has her school's winter recital, and I gave my word I would attend. All deliverables are on track. The Q4 data analysis is complete and submitted. The server backup protocols are running automatically. Marcus Williams in IT support has been briefed and can handle any immediate technical issues. Respectfully, Daniel Brooks, Senior Data Analyst. He read it 3 times, changed non-negotiable to important, changed it back. The word mattered. This wasn't negotiable. He attached a detailed handoff document, 19 pages of procedures, contact information, system passwords, and contingency protocols, everything someone would need to cover his responsibilities for a single day. His finger hovered over the send button. Through the door, he heard someone laugh in the hallway. The sound seemed alien in this place. Hawthorne Capital wasn't built for laughter. It was built for precision. Daniel clicked send. The email disappeared into the digital void. He looked at Emily's drawing again. The sun she'd colored in bright yellow. The crowns she'd given them both. "I'll be there, sweetheart," he whispered to the stick figure on the wall. "I promise." Outside, snow continued to fall. Inside, the servers hummed their endless mechanical song. Daniel turned back to his work, unaware that 16 floors above him, his email had just appeared in Victoria Hawthorne's inbox, unaware that in less than 24 hours, everything would change. Victoria's email notification chimed at 6:47 p.m. She'd cleared through 38 messages. 5 remained. The subject line caught her attention. Time off request, December 18. She opened it. Read it once. Read it again. Her expression didn't change, but her jaw tightened imperceptibly. Outside, the snow had intensified. White curtains of it cascaded past the windows, erasing the city below. The Weather Service was calling it the worst December storm in 15 years. Government offices were closing. Schools had already announced delays, but not Hawthorne Capital, never Hawthorne Capital. Victoria read the email a third time. Daniel Brooks, Senior Data Analyst. She pulled up his employee file with 3 quick clicks. 9 years of service. Perfect attendance. Consistent performance reviews. Multiple commendations for going beyond baseline requirements. No disciplinary actions, no complaints. A model employee by every measurable standard. Until now. She looked at the date he'd requested. Tomorrow. He was asking for tomorrow. Not next week with proper notice. Not next month with scheduling flexibility. Tomorrow, in the middle of a blizzard, with half the staff likely to call in sick anyway. Her eyes found the phrase again. Non-negotiable family commitment. Non-negotiable. Victoria's fingers drummed once on the desk. The word grated against everything she'd built. In business, everything was negotiable. Everything had terms, conditions, alternative solutions. She noticed the attachment. Clicked it open. 19 pages of documentation. Procedures for every system he managed. Contact trees. Password protocols. Contingency plans. He'd essentially written a manual for his own absence. Thorough, professional, prepared, and completely irrelevant. Victoria clicked reply. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with the same cold precision she brought to every decision. Mr. Brooks, your request is denied. Tomorrow's attendance is mandatory, particularly given the anticipated weather-related absences. Your presence is required to ensure operational continuity. As outlined in the employee handbook, personal leave requires 2 weeks advance notice except in cases of medical emergency. Your situation does not qualify. Policy does not bend for weather or emotion. Your daughter's school event, while personally significant, does not constitute grounds for deviation from established protocol. I expect you at your desk tomorrow morning. Victoria Hawthorne, CEO, Hawthorne Capital. She clicked send before the cursor had finished blinking. The email vanished. Done. Victoria returned to the remaining messages in her inbox. A supplier contract needing approval. An invitation to speak at a conference. A request from her father to attend some charity event. She worked through them methodically, one after another. At 8:15 p.m., her phone buzzed. A reply from Daniel Brooks. She opened it. Miss Hawthorne, I understand your position. However, my decision remains unchanged. I will not be at my desk tomorrow. I will be at my daughter's recital. I have worked for 9 years without absence. I have given this company evenings, weekends, and holidays. I have never asked for special consideration. I am asking now. My work is complete. My responsibilities are covered. One day will not damage this company's operations, but missing tomorrow will damage something far more important to me. I respectfully maintain my request. Daniel Brooks. Victoria read it twice. Then she opened a new email and typed a single line. Mr. Brooks, your absence tomorrow will be considered insubordination. You will face immediate disciplinary action up to and including termination. This is your final notice. She sent it, closed her laptop, stood and walked to the window. Snow covered everything now. The streets below were empty. The storm had won the battle for today. But tomorrow, Hawthorne Capital would be open. Tomorrow, the machinery would continue, and Daniel Brooks would either be at his desk or he would no longer work here. Simple, clean, non-negotiable. Victoria gathered her things and left the office. Her driver was waiting in the garage, the black sedan already running, heated seats ready. She slid into the back and pulled out her tablet to continue working during the 20-minute ride home. She didn't think about Daniel Brooks again that night. Didn't think about 7-year-old girls in winter recitals. Didn't think about promises made by desperate fathers. The car pulled through the snowy streets, and Victoria Hawthorne worked, as she always did, with absolute focus and zero doubt. Daniel stared at the email on his phone screen. The words seemed to glow brighter than they should. Immediate disciplinary action up to and including termination. He sat in his apartment's small kitchen. Emily was already asleep, her silver recital dress hanging carefully on her closet door, ready for tomorrow. Through the thin walls, he could hear Mrs. Chen's television next door. Outside, the wind howled. His phone showed 9:33 p.m. In 9 hours, he needed to make a choice. His laptop sat open on the kitchen table. He pulled up his bank account. The numbers told a simple story. 3 months of rent in savings. Maybe 4 if he cut everything to the bone. After that, nothing. Jobs in data analytics weren't rare, but good ones were. Hawthorne Capital paid above market rate. The health insurance was comprehensive. The retirement matching was generous. Leaving would mean starting over. Lower salary, at least initially. Worse benefits. No guarantee the next place would value his work the way. Daniel stopped himself. Did Hawthorne Capital actually value his work, or did they just value his compliance? He stood and walked to Emily's bedroom door. Opened it quietly. She slept curled on her side, her small hand tucked under her pillow. A nightlight shaped like a star cast gentle shadows across her walls. Above her bed hung a dozen drawings, all winter-themed, snowflakes, ice castles, and one, the largest, of a girl in a silver dress standing under a spotlight, with an audience of stick figures watching. In the front row, she'd drawn him, labeled with an arrow and the word Daddy in red crayon. Daniel pulled out his phone, opened his message history with Emily, scrolled back through months of texts. Daddy, when are you coming home? Daddy, I learned the second verse today. Daddy, Mrs. Chen says you work too much. Daddy, you promised. He'd promised. How many promises had he broken? How many school conferences had he missed? How many bedtime stories had been replaced with tired kisses on a sleeping forehead? This wasn't supposed to be one more. Daniel returned to the kitchen, picked up his phone, started typing a new email to Victoria Hawthorne, then deleted it. Started again. Deleted again. What could he possibly say that would change her mind? She'd made her position clear. Policy over people, systems over souls. He thought about his father. The man had worked 3 jobs to keep Daniel and his sister fed after their mother died. Daniel was 8 years old when he'd asked his father why he never came to his baseball games. His father had said, "Because I'm keeping the lights on, son. Someone has to." Daniel had understood. Even then, had never asked again, had learned that sacrifice was what fathers did. But his father had also died at 54, alone in a factory break room during a double shift, with a heart that had finally given out from the weight of decades of keeping the lights on. Daniel had been 23. At the funeral, his sister had whispered, "He never stopped working long enough to live." The words had haunted him ever since. Was he becoming his father? Trading presents for paychecks? Teaching Emily that love meant absence, that priority meant work, that promises meant nothing when money was involved. He opened his email. Victoria's message stared back at him. Immediate disciplinary action up to and including termination. Daniel looked at the clock. 10:47 p.m. In 9 hours and 13 minutes, Emily's recital would begin. He could wake up tomorrow, put on his suit, drive through the blizzard to Hawthorne Capital, sit at his desk and prove that he was dependable, reliable, committed to the company. And Emily would stand on that stage, scanning the audience, looking for the father who had promised to be there. She was 7 years old. She wouldn't understand mandatory attendance or company policy or fiscal responsibility. She would understand one thing. Daddy didn't come. Daniel closed his laptop, walked to the window. The snow fell in thick curtains, already piling 2 feet deep on the sidewalk below. The city had gone quiet. No cars moved. No people walked. Just white silence spreading across everything. He pulled out his phone one final time, opened a new message to Victoria Hawthorne. His thumbs hovered over the screen. Then he deleted the draft. There was nothing left to say. She'd made her decision. Now he had to make his. Daniel looked back at Emily's door, at the crack of light beneath it from her star nightlight, at the home he'd built from nothing but determination and overtime hours. He thought about his father's funeral, the empty seats, the co-workers who'd sent flowers but couldn't name a single memory that didn't involve work. He thought about Emily's drawing, the stick figure labeled Daddy sitting in the front row. Daniel Brooks made his choice. He would be at that recital, whatever it cost. He turned off the lights, went to bed. Set his alarm not for 5:30 a.m., the usual time, but for 11 a.m. Late enough to sleep. Early enough to help Emily get ready. As he closed his eyes, snow continued to fall. And somewhere across the city, Victoria Hawthorne slept soundly, confident that tomorrow her company would run exactly as it should. She had no idea that sometimes the cost of absolute control is learning you never had any to begin with. The morning came gray and hushed. Daniel woke to find the city transformed. Snow had buried cars completely. Sidewalks disappeared under 3-foot drifts. The street below looked like an untouched field. His phone showed 14 missed messages from Hawthorne Capital's emergency operations line. Automated messages about delayed openings, modified schedules, essential personnel only. He deleted them all. Emily burst into his room at 11:30, already wearing her silver dress despite having 3 hours until showtime. "Daddy, it's today. It's really today. I see that." Daniel smiled, pulling her into a hug. "You look like a real star. Mrs. Chen says the buses aren't running. That's okay. We'll walk. In all that snow, I've walked through worse to get to work. I can walk through worse to see you shine." Her smile could have melted every flake in Chicago. They ate lunch together. Grilled cheese sandwiches, her favorite. She practiced her song 3 more times, each performance slightly different, slightly more confident. Daniel applauded after every one. At 1 p.m., they bundled up. Winter coats, scarves, gloves, boots. The walk to Lincoln Elementary was normally 15 minutes. Today, it would take 30, maybe 40. They didn't care. Emily held his hand as they stepped into the white world. The snow came up to her knees. Daniel lifted her onto his shoulders, and she laughed as he trudged forward, each step sinking deep into fresh powder. Other families emerged from buildings along the route, parents carrying children, grandparents moving carefully on cleared patches, all heading toward the same destination, all wearing the same expression. Nothing would stop them from being there. Daniel's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. They arrived at Lincoln Elementary at 1:47 p.m. The old building glowed with warm light. Windows steamed from the heat inside. Someone had shoveled the front steps. Parents stood in the lobby, stamping snow from their boots, laughing at shared misery and mutual determination. Emily's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, greeted them at the auditorium entrance. "Daniel, Emily, I'm so glad you made it. We weren't sure how many families would get through. We wouldn't miss it," Daniel said. Mrs. Patterson smiled. "Emily, the other performers are backstage. Your dad can find a seat in the front section. We're saving those for families of our lead performers." Emily hugged Daniel's leg once more. "You'll see me, right? Front row, center seat if I can get it. Promise?" "Already kept that promise, sweetheart. I'm here." She beamed and ran backstage with the other children. Daniel found his seat. Front row. 3rd seat from center, close enough. The auditorium filled slowly. 70, 80, maybe 90 people total. Small for a school recital, but impressive given the weather. Every person there had made a choice to be there. Daniel pulled out his phone. Most were automated, but 3 were direct, from Marcus Williams in IT. "Bro, where are you?" Victoria is asking, from his supervisor, Gerald. "Daniel, you need to call in immediately." From Victoria Hawthorne herself, "Mr. Brooks, your absence has been noted. Contact me immediately." He turned the phone off, put it in his pocket, focused on the stage. At 2:07 p.m., the lights dimmed. A piano began playing. Children filed onto the stage in costume snowflakes, winter winds, frost spirits, and ice makers. They formed rows, youngest in front, oldest in back. And then, from stage left, a single spotlight illuminated Emily. She wore her silver dress, a crown made of tinsel and paper stars. She held a wand wrapped in white ribbon. She looked exactly like what she was supposed to be, the winter star. The piano shifted to her entrance music. Emily stepped forward, her small voice filling the auditorium with surprising strength. In the longest night of winter's cold embrace, when darkness falls on every earthly place, one star appears to guide the lost back home, to show that even ice can help love grow. Daniel's throat tightened. She'd practiced this song 100 times in their apartment. But here, on this stage, under these lights, she wasn't just reciting words. She was performing. She was alive. She was everything he'd worked for and everything he'd almost missed. The song continued. Other children joined in harmony. The story unfolded a tale of winter spirits, learning that their purpose wasn't to freeze the world, but to prepare it for spring's return. Emily's solo came in the third verse. She stepped to center stage, the spotlight following her, and sang about the star that never abandons the night sky, even when clouds hide its light. Daniel realized he was crying, not sobbing, just silent tears tracking down his face, because she was looking right at him, singing to him. And in her eyes, he could see that she knew he'd kept his promise, that he'd chosen her, that for once, for one perfect, important moment, he'd chosen her. The song ended. The audience erupted in applause. Emily bowed with the other children, but her eyes never left her father. After the curtain call, after the photos, after the other parents had congratulated him on Emily's performance, Daniel and his daughter walked back out into the snow. "Did you like it, Daddy? You were perfect. I sang the third verse just for you. Did you notice?" "I noticed everything, sweetheart." She took his hand. They walked home through the white streets as the sun began to set, turning the snow pink and gold. Daniel's phone stayed off. He'd deal with tomorrow when tomorrow came. Tonight belonged to Emily. The email arrived at 8:43 a.m. the following morning. Daniel had known it was coming. Had spent the previous night after Emily went to bed preparing for it mentally. But seeing the words on screen still felt like a punch to the chest. "Mr. Brooks, effective immediately, your employment with Hawthorne Capital is terminated. Your final paycheck, including accrued vacation time, will be processed according to state law. Your company laptop, access credentials, and any proprietary materials must be returned to Human Resources by December 23rd. Your health insurance coverage ends December 31st. Information regarding COBRA continuation coverage will be mailed to your address on file. This decision is final and non-appealable. Victoria Hawthorne, CEO, Hawthorne Capital." Daniel read it 3 times. Then he forwarded it to his personal email account for his records, closed his laptop, stood and made coffee. Emily was still asleep. The apartment was quiet except for the radiator's gentle hiss. Plows had finally cleared the main streets, leaving mountains of white along the curbs. He'd been fired. 9 years. Gone. The strange thing was how little he felt. No anger, no panic. Just a weird, hollow calm. He pulled out his phone, typed a simple response, "Understood." I will return all company property by the specified date. Thank you for the opportunity. Professional. Clean. No emotion. He sent it. Then he opened his banking app. Looked at the numbers again. 3 months. Maybe 4. He'd need to file for unemployment immediately. Update his resume. Start reaching out to contacts in the industry. The job search would be harder during the holidays, but not impossible. He had skills, experience, references from managers who'd left Hawthorne over the years. People who remembered his work ethically rather than just statistically. He could do this. He had to do this. Emily appeared in the kitchen doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Daddy? Why are you home?" "I took some extra time off, sweetheart." "Really?" "Really." She climbed into his lap, still warm from her bed. "Can we make pancakes?" "Absolutely." They made pancakes together. Emily insisted on adding chocolate chips, which turned into a messy, wonderful disaster of batter and laughter. They ate at the small kitchen table, watching the morning light reflect off the snow outside. Daniel didn't tell her about the email, didn't explain that he'd lost his job, didn't burden her with the weight of adult consequences. She was 7. She deserved to simply be 7. After breakfast, she went to watch cartoons. Daniel sat at his laptop and began the mechanical process of unemployment. Applications, forms, documentation. His phone rang. Marcus Williams from IT. "Dan, man," I heard. "I'm so sorry." "It's all right. It's not all right. You're the best analyst we have." "Victoria's insane if she thinks." "Marcus, I appreciate it. But I made my choice. I knew the consequences." A pause. Was it worth it? Daniel thought about Emily on stage. The silver dress, the spotlight, her voice filling the auditorium. The way she'd looked at him during the 3rd verse. "Yeah," he said quietly. It was worth it. They talked for a few more minutes. Marcus promised to serve as a reference. Said half the department was furious about the firing. Said Victoria had already sent a company-wide memo about maintaining standards during challenging times. After they hung up, Daniel sat in silence. He'd chosen Emily over his career. He'd chosen presence over paychecks. He'd chosen to be the father his own father never had the chance to be. And if that meant starting over, rebuilding from nothing, facing an uncertain future, so be it. Some things were worth the cost. Daniel opened his resume document and began updating it. Outside, the city continued its slow recovery from the blizzard. Inside, a father who'd lost his job smiled as he heard his daughter singing the Winter Star song in the living room, practicing for an audience of stuffed animals. Tomorrow would bring challenges. Today, he'd been there. And that, Daniel thought, was the only victory that truly mattered. The grand ballroom of the Peninsula Chicago glittered like a frozen palace. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across white marble floors. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city beyond, still covered in snow from the blizzard 3 days prior. Victoria Hawthorne arrived at 7 p.m. precisely. Her emerald gown cut sharp lines against the soft elegance around her. Diamond earrings caught the light as she moved through the crowd with practiced grace. The Winter Charity Gala, her father's annual event, a gathering of Chicago's elite to raise money for causes they'd never personally encounter. Homeless shelters, food banks, youth programs. Victoria attended every year. Wrote a generous check every year, made brief small talk every year, left early every year. Tonight would be no different. She accepted champagne from a passing waiter, scanned the room for her father. Charles Hawthorne held court near the string quartet, surrounded by the usual suspects, board members, philanthropists, politicians positioning for the upcoming election. Victoria approached, preparing her professional smile. Then she stopped. Her father was laughing. Genuinely laughing. Not the polite chuckle he deployed at tedious donor events, but actual, shoulders-shaking laughter. and standing beside him, wearing a simple but well-tailored suit, was Daniel Brooks. Victoria's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. Daniel looked different outside the fluorescent office environment, more relaxed. His smile reached his eyes. He was saying something that made her father laugh again, one hand gesturing animatedly. Charles noticed her. "Victoria, come here. I want you to meet someone." She moved forward on autopilot, her mind racing. "This is Daniel Brooks." "Daniel, my daughter Victoria." Daniel's smile didn't falter, but something shifted in his eyes. Recognition, and something else. Not anger, not resentment, just a quiet acknowledgement. "Miss Hawthorne." He extended his hand. She shook it. "Mr. Brooks." Her father looked between them. "You two know each other?" "Mr. Brooks worked at Hawthorne Capital," Victoria said carefully. "Briefly. 9 years, actually," Daniel corrected gently. "Though I recently transitioned to other opportunities." Charles laughed. "Transitioned, that's diplomatic. Daniel here has been consulting for the Hawthorne Foundation for the past 6 months. Best analyst we've had in years. He's been helping us optimize our giving strategy, identify impact metrics, reduce administrative overhead." Victoria's champagne glass felt suddenly heavy. 6 months? "Started last June," Charles confirmed. "I met him through Robert Chen. You remember Robert? Runs that tech incubator on the South Side." Robert said Daniel was volunteering his skills to help local nonprofits with data infrastructure. I thought, why not bring that expertise to the foundation? Daniel spoke quietly. "It was evening and weekend work. Never interfered with my day job." Past tense, day job. Victoria's mind replayed the termination email she'd sent. The one-line dismissal of 9 years of service. Charles continued, oblivious to the undercurrent. "Daniel's actually the reason tonight's event is running so smoothly. He built a new donor management system, integrated it with our CRM, created real-time impact dashboards. We can see exactly where every dollar goes, how it's being used, what results we're achieving. I just organized the data," Daniel said. "Your team does the real work." "Nonsense. You've revolutionized how we operate." Charles placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder, a gesture of genuine affection. "And I heard about your situation at Hawthorne Capital. I'm sorry things didn't work out there." Victoria's throat tightened. "It worked out exactly as it should have," Daniel said. His eyes met Victoria's. "I made a choice. I stand by it. Well, their loss is definitely someone else's gain." Charles pulled out his phone. "In fact, I've been meaning to introduce you to Margaret Wilson. She runs the Civic Innovation Lab downtown. They're looking for a director of analytics. The position's permanent, full-time, excellent benefits. More importantly, it's the kind of work that actually matters." "That's generous, Charles, but no buts. You have a gift, Daniel. You see patterns others miss. You turn numbers into narratives that drive change. That's rare." Charles scrolled through his contacts. "Plus, I hear you have a daughter. Margaret's organization is genuinely family-friendly. Flexible schedules, remote options. They understand that good people have whole lives, not just work lives." Victoria watched her father type a message, watched Daniel's expression shift from polite resistance to genuine interest, watched the easy rapport between them, the kind of connection she'd never managed to build with anyone at her own company. "Actually," Daniel said, "I'd be interested in learning more." "Excellent. I'll set up a meeting." Charles looked up. "Victoria, you should get to know Daniel better. He's the kind of talent you'd want at Hawthorne Capital." "We've met," she said. "I mean really know him. Beyond the employee file." Charles smiled. "Did you know his daughter performed the lead role in her school's winter recital during that blizzard?" Daniel walked 45 minutes through waist-deep snow to be there. Victoria's champagne had gone warm in her hand. A man who shows up for his daughter will show up for anything that matters. Charles clapped Daniel on the shoulder. That's the kind of commitment you can't teach. Someone called Charles from across the room. He excused himself, leaving Victoria and Daniel standing together in the glittering ballroom, surrounded by music and laughter and people who'd never known the weight of choosing between a promise and a paycheck. The silence between them stretched. Finally, Victoria spoke. "You never mentioned the foundation work. You never asked what I did outside office hours. It's impressive. What you built for them. Thank you." Another pause. A waiter offered to refresh Victoria's champagne. "Mr. Brooks." It's all right, Miss Hawthorne." Daniel's voice was kind, which somehow made it worse. "You made a decision based on your principles. I made a decision based on mine. We both knew the consequences. You lost your job. I gained something more important." He pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. Emily on stage, mid-performance, the spotlight making her silver dress glow. "I gained the memory of my daughter looking into the audience and seeing me there. I gained the knowledge that when it mattered most, I chose right." Victoria stared at the photo. The little girl's smile, the joy captured in pixels. "Your father spoke very highly of you," she said quietly. "Charles is generous with his praise." "No, my father. In your employee file. Your references. Every manager you worked under mentioned your dedication, your reliability, your skill." She met his eyes. "I read all of that before I fired you." Daniel nodded slowly. "And you still made the call you felt you had to make. Then we understand each other." Victoria wanted to say more, wanted to explain about policies, about standards, about the necessity of drawing hard lines in leadership, wanted to defend the decision she'd made with such cold certainty 3 days ago. But, looking at Daniel Brooks standing here in borrowed confidence, having lost everything she'd thought mattered, yet somehow, still intact, the words felt hollow. "I should go," Daniel said. "Emily's with a babysitter, and I promised I'd be home by 10. "Of course." He started to leave, then turned back. "For what it's worth, Miss Hawthorne, I hope you build something great at Hawthorne Capital. I really do. Just don't forget that the best machinery in the world still runs on human hands." He walked away, disappeared into the crowd of elegant donors and champagne holders and people who'd never had to choose between being present and being employed. Victoria stood alone in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by light and music and the charity her father had built on the principle that success meant nothing if it didn't serve something larger than itself. She looked at her own champagne glass, saw her reflection fractured in the crystal, and for the first time in years, Victoria Hawthorne wondered if absolute control was the same as absolute strength, or if perhaps, in her relentless pursuit of one, she'd lost sight of the other. Victoria didn't sleep that night. She'd returned to her Lincoln Park penthouse at 9:30 p.m., earlier than usual. Poured herself scotch she didn't drink, stood at her floor-to-ceiling windows, watching snow-covered Chicago glitter under streetlights. Daniel Brooks's words echoed, "The best machinery in the world still runs on human hands." She'd built Hawthorne Capital on a simple philosophy: eliminate variables, maximize efficiency, remove emotion from decision-making. It had worked spectacularly. Revenue growth averaged 18% annually. Client retention exceeded 92%. Employee turnover stayed below industry average. Below average, but not zero. Victoria pulled out her laptop, opened HR records, began scrolling through exit interviews from the past 2 years. Marcus Chen, senior developer. "The work is excellent, but I never see my kids. I need better balance." Jennifer Park, account manager. "I'm burned out. The pressure is constant. There's no room to breathe." Thomas Wright, operations director. "I respect Victoria's vision, but I don't want to become it. There has to be more to life than quarterly targets." 43 departures in 24 months. She'd always viewed them as acceptable attrition people who couldn't handle the standards, who lacked commitment, who chose comfort over excellence. But reading them now, after the gala, after seeing her father's genuine affection for Daniel Brooks, after seeing what she'd always classified as soft skills producing tangible results, the exit interviews read differently. They weren't complaints about difficulty. They were statements about values. Her phone buzzed. An email from her father. "Sweetheart, I hope you enjoyed the gala. I wanted to mention Daniel Brooks is exactly the kind of person whose talent should be celebrated, not discarded. I don't know what happened at Hawthorne Capital, and it's not my business, but I do know this. Leadership isn't measured by who follows orders. It's measured by who becomes better for having worked with you. Think about the legacy you're building. Is it one of fear or inspiration? Love, always. Dad." Victoria read it 3 times. Her father rarely commented on her business decisions. The fact that he'd sent this, unprompted, at midnight, spoke volumes. She opened a new browser tab, searched for Lincoln Elementary School, found photos from the winter recital. Emily Brooks, age 7, performing as the winter star. The girl looked radiant, confident, loved. Victoria clicked through the album, found one photo that made her breath catch. Daniel Brooks in the front row, tears streaming down his face, applauding. The raw emotion on his face, pride, love, relief, was almost painful to witness. That was the moment she'd destroyed. Not by firing him, he'd found his feet, would land somewhere better. Already had her father's recommendation and a promising lead. No. She'd destroyed the moment by creating a system where a father had to choose between keeping his daughter's promise and keeping his job, where 9 years of perfect service meant nothing compared to 1 day of insubordination. Victoria closed the laptop, walked to her window. The city spread below her millions of people, each with their own struggles, their own promises, their own impossible choices. She thought about her own father. Charles Hawthorne had built his wealth through savvy investments and strategic risk-taking. But he'd also coached her soccer team, attended every piano recital, took her to the office on Saturdays not to teach her about business, but to share his world with her. When had she forgotten that? When had she become so focused on the machinery that she'd stopped seeing the hands that operated it? Her phone buzzed again. Marcus Williams from IDE. "Victoria, I'm giving my notice. 2 weeks. I've accepted a position with better work-life balance. I wanted to tell you first out of respect, even though I know you'll see it as weakness. But I watched what happened to Daniel, and I realized I don't want to be the guy who misses everything important because he was too afraid to set boundaries. Thanks for the opportunity." She stared at the message. Marcus was one of her strongest developers. Losing him would hurt, replacing him would take months, and he was leaving because of her. Because of the culture she'd built. Because of Daniel Brooks. Victoria sat down, opened a new email, stared at the blank screen. What could she possibly write? An apology? An explanation? A justification? She deleted the draft, started again, deleted again. Finally, she wrote, "Mr. Brooks, I saw you at the gala tonight. I saw the photo of your daughter's performance. I heard my father's assessment of your work with the foundation. I owe you an apology. Not for enforcing policy, that's my job, but for failing to see that policy without wisdom is just tyranny with a procedure manual. You gave Hawthorne Capital 9 years of exceptional service. You asked for 1 day in 9 years. And I responded with termination instead of gratitude. That was wrong. I can't undo it. I can't give you back the job you lost or the security you sacrificed. But I can acknowledge that you made the right choice, and I made the wrong one. Your daughter is lucky to have a father who understands that some promises matter more than any career. I hope Margaret Wilson's organization recognizes what they're getting. And I hope your daughter's recital was everything you hoped it would be. Sincerely, Victoria Hawthorne." She read it 5 times, changed words, changed them back. Finally, at 2:47 a.m., she sent it. The email vanished into the digital void. Victoria closed her laptop, returned to the window, watched snow fall in light curtains across the city. Tomorrow, she would go to the office. She would run her company. She would maintain standards. But maybe, just maybe, she would also remember that standards without humanity weren't strength. They were just ice, pretending to be steel. Daniel's phone buzzed at 7:15 a.m. He was making Emily breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, her second favorite after pancakes. He glanced at the screen. An email from Victoria Hawthorne. His first instinct was to delete it unread, but curiosity won. He opened it while Emily poured orange juice with intense concentration, tongue between her teeth. He read it once, then again. Then a third time. I can't undo it. I can't give you back the job you lost or the security you sacrificed. But I can acknowledge that you made the right choice, and I made the wrong one. Daniel set down the phone, flipped the eggs. Daddy, you okay? Emily looked up at him with those impossibly perceptive 7-year-old eyes. Yeah, sweetheart. I'm okay. You look surprised. Someone said something I didn't expect. Something good? Daniel thought about it. Yeah. Something good. They ate breakfast together. Emily chattered about school, about her friends' reactions to the recital, about how Mrs. Patterson had said she might get the lead in the spring show too. After she left for school, Daniel sat at his laptop, stared at Victoria's email. She'd apologized. Genuinely, from what he could tell, acknowledged the mistake. Didn't try to justify it or minimize it. That took courage. He knew enough about powerful people to understand that admissions of error didn't come easily. He clicked reply. Miss Hawthorne, thank you for your email. I appreciate your honesty. You're right that you can't undo what happened. But you can learn from it. And judging by this message, you already are. I don't harbor anger toward you. You built a remarkable company using principles you believed would lead to success. Those principles worked, by most measures. But success has many definitions. I hope you find a way to balance the standards that got you here with the humanity that will get you somewhere even better. As for Emily's recital, it was perfect. She sang like she'd been born to stand in that spotlight. And when she looked at me in the audience, I saw something I'll never forget. Trust. She trusted I'd be there, and I was. That's worth more than any job. I spoke with Margaret Wilson yesterday. The interview is next week. Your father's recommendation opened a door I didn't know existed. So, in a strange way, everything worked out exactly as it should have. I wish you well, Miss Hawthorne. Build something great, but build something kind, too. Daniel Brooks. He sent it before he could second-guess himself. His phone rang almost immediately. Unknown number. Hello, Daniel Brooks? This is Margaret Wilson from the Civic Innovation Lab. His pulse quickened. Miss Wilson, I wasn't expecting a call until next week. Charles Hawthorne is very persuasive. He called me at 6 this morning, wouldn't let me hang up until I agreed to move up our timeline. She laughed. Can you come in today? I know it's short notice, but I'd love to discuss the director position in person. Daniel looked at his calendar. Completely empty. Terrifyingly empty. I can be there by 10. Perfect. See you then. The call ended. Daniel sat in stunned silence. This was happening. Actually happening. Less than a week after losing his job, a door was opening. A better door. He spent the next 2 hours preparing. Research on the Civic Innovation Lab. Review of their programs. Notes on how his skills could serve their mission. Pressed his interview suit. Triple-checked the address. At 9:30, he caught the train downtown. The city had mostly recovered from the blizzard. Streets were clear. Life had resumed. The crisis had passed, leaving only white mountains and parking lots as evidence it had happened at all. The Civic Innovation Lab occupied 3 floors of a renovated warehouse in the West Loop. Exposed brick. Natural light. Plants everywhere. People worked in open spaces, collaborated in glass rooms, laughed over coffee in a communal kitchen. It looked nothing like Hawthorne Capital. Margaret Wilson greeted him personally. A woman in her 50s, silver hair, kind eyes, firm handshake. "Daniel, thank you for coming on such short notice." The interview lasted 3 hours. They discussed data systems, impact measurement, resource allocation. Margaret showed him their current challenges, asked his opinion, listened intently to his suggestions. Then she said, "Tell me about your daughter." Daniel blinked. "My daughter? Charles mentioned you made a difficult choice recently, between work and family. I want to hear about it. Not the corporate side, I got that story. I want to hear it from you." So Daniel told her. About Emily, about the recital, about 9 years of perfect attendance, about the choice he'd made knowing exactly what it would cost. Margaret listened without interrupting. When he finished, she nodded slowly. "We need someone like you here, not despite that choice, but because of it. You understand that data serves people, not the other way around. You understand that the numbers tell human stories." She stood. "I'd like to offer you the position. Director of Analytics. Competitive salary, full benefits, retirement matching. But more importantly, flexible schedule, remote options, and a culture that respects the fact that everyone here has a life outside these walls." Daniel's throat tightened. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Start after the holidays. Take time with Emily. Then come help us change how this city serves its most vulnerable populations." "Yes," Daniel said. "Absolutely yes." They shook hands. Margaret smiled. "Welcome to the team. I think you're going to love it here." Daniel left the building in a daze, stood on the sidewalk in winter sunshine, watching traffic pass, trying to process that the nightmare week had somehow transformed into something better. His phone buzzed. A text from Emily. "Mrs. Chen says you have good news. Is it true?" He smiled, typed back. "Very true. Tell you everything tonight." "Pancakes for dinner?" "Yes." "Extra chocolate chips?" "All the chocolate chips." Daniel pocketed his phone, started walking toward the train. The city spread around him, imperfect, chaotic, beautiful. He'd lost a job, gained a better one, kept a promise, found a new path, and somehow, impossibly, everything had worked out. Not because the system was fair, not because virtue was always rewarded, but because sometimes, when you choose the right thing for the right reasons, the universe finds a way to catch you when you fall. Daniel Brooks boarded the train home, carrying news that would make his daughter scream with joy. And, for the first time in a very long time, the future felt bright. Victoria stood outside Lincoln Elementary School. Snow still covered the playground, but children didn't seem to care. They ran through it, building forts, throwing snowballs, their laughter echoing across the white expanse. She'd driven here on impulse. After sending the email to Daniel, after receiving his gracious reply, after learning from her father that Margaret Wilson had hired him after all of it, she'd needed to see this place. The place where a 7-year-old girl had performed in a winter recital while her father watched from the front row, crying. The place that had cost Daniel Brooks his job. The place that had begun Victoria's thaw. She didn't go inside. Just stood on the sidewalk, watching. The building was old, probably built in the 1960s. Paint peeled on the window frames. The roof needed repair, but light poured from every window, and music drifted through the walls. Another class practicing. Another group of children learning that their voices mattered. Her phone rang. Marcus Williams. "Victoria? I got your message. Are you serious?" That morning, she'd sent an email to her entire leadership team. Subject line: Culture Assessment and Policy Review. She'd announced a company-wide audit of work-life balance policies, mandatory vacation minimums, flexible schedule pilots, remote work options, A commitment to evaluating not just performance metrics, but employee well-being. It wasn't revolutionary. Most modern companies had these policies already, but for Hawthorne Capital, it was a seismic shift. "I'm serious," Victoria said. "We've confused rigidity with rigor." That ends now. People are already talking about it. Half the office thinks it's a trap. Victoria almost smiled. It's not a trap, it's an evolution. Excellence doesn't require suffering. I forgot that. I won't forget it again. For what it's worth, Marcus said quietly, this is the right call. We've been losing good people for the wrong reasons. I know. I'm trying to fix it. After they hung up, Victoria sat in her car, watched children play in the snow, thought about her own childhood, her father pushing her on swings in Lincoln Park, teaching her that success meant building something that mattered. Somewhere inside that school, Emily Brooks was probably drawing pictures or solving math problems or laughing with friends, living her 7-year-old life, blissfully unaware that her father's choice had rippled outward, changing the trajectory of a company she'd never heard of. Victoria's phone buzzed. A text from her father. "I heard about the policy changes." "Proud of you, sweetheart," she replied. "I had a good teacher. You had the potential. You just needed a reminder." Victoria started her car, drove back toward downtown. But instead of going to her office, she found herself parking near the Civic Innovation Lab. She sat across the street, watching people enter and exit, saw the exposed brick, the natural light, the coffee shop on the ground floor where employees laughed over pastries. This was where Daniel would work, where he'd use his skills to serve nonprofits and community organizations, where he'd build systems that helped people instead of just extracting value from them. She wondered if Hawthorne Capital could become more like that. Not abandoning profit, but redefining it. Measuring success not just in revenue, but in the lives of the people who generated it. Her phone buzzed again. An email from her executive assistant. "Your 2 p.m. meeting is ready. Conference room B." Victoria had called an emergency board meeting. She needed to present her policy changes, make the case for cultural transformation, convince skeptical investors that humanity and profitability weren't mutually exclusive. It would be the hardest pitch of her career, but she was ready. She drove to Hawthorne Capital, rode the elevator to the 42nd floor, entered the conference room where, just weeks ago, she'd lectured department heads about precision and control. The board members sat waiting. 12 faces, skeptical and curious. Victoria stood at the head of the table. Behind her, the city spread in winter sunlight. The snow was melting. Slow, but steady. "Thank you for coming," she began. "I want to talk about the future of this company. Not the next quarter, not the next year, the next decade." She clicked to her first slide. A quote from her father, Charles Hawthorne. "Success without humanity is just a well-organized decline." Victoria took a breath. "I've built Hawthorne Capital on principles of efficiency and discipline. Those principles brought us here. But they won't take us where we need to go." She told them about Daniel Brooks, about 9 years of service, about a winter recital, about the choice she'd made and the choice she should have made. "I fired a man for choosing his daughter," she said. "And in doing so, I revealed that our culture values compliance over character." That ends today. The presentation lasted 40 minutes. Policy changes. Cultural initiatives. Metrics for measuring employee satisfaction alongside revenue growth. When she finished, the room sat silent. Then Sarah Mitchell, the oldest board member, spoke. "This is a significant shift, Victoria. What makes you think it's necessary?" Victoria looked at each of them. "Because we're losing our best people. Because talent wants more than just a paycheck. Because the world is changing, and companies that don't adapt become fossils. And if this reduces our profit margins, then we'll be a slightly less profitable company with significantly better people." I'll take that trade. The debate lasted another hour. Pushback, questions, concerns. But slowly, gradually, Victoria saw expressions shift. Skepticism became consideration. Consideration became cautious acceptance. They voted 9-3 in favor. The policy changes would move forward. Victoria left the meeting exhausted but oddly lighter. She returned to her office, stood at the window, watched the sun set over snow-covered Chicago. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Miss Hawthorne, this is Daniel Brooks. I heard about the changes at Hawthorne Capital. I'm glad. I think you're building something important. Good luck. She smiled, typed back. Thank you. Good luck at the Civic Innovation Lab. I have a feeling you're going to change that city, one spreadsheet at a time. Victoria laughed. Actually laughed. Put her phone down, looked at the city. The winter wasn't over. Snow still covered everything. But the sun was stronger now. The ice was melting, and beneath it, something new was growing. Victoria Hawthorne had been the Ice Queen. She'd ruled with precision and control and absolute certainty. But ice, she was learning, was just water that had forgotten how to flow, and she was ready to thaw. 4 months later, Daniel stood in the conference room of the Civic Innovation Lab, presenting his findings to a group of nonprofit leaders. Based on our data analysis, he explained, your current resource allocation focuses 70% of funding on administrative overhead. But the communities you serve need direct programming. If we shift that ratio to 60-40, we can expand services by 35% without increasing budget. The nonprofit directors leaned forward, engaged. Margaret Wilson smiled from the back of the room. After the presentation, Daniel checked his phone. A text from Emily's teacher. Emily earned the lead in our spring musical. Thought you'd want to know. He grinned. Texted back, I'll be there. Front row, center seat. His schedule at the Civic Innovation Lab made that promise easy to keep. No more choosing between work and family. Both could coexist. Both should coexist. That evening, he picked Emily up from school. They walked home through streets where snow had finally surrendered to sunshine. Flowers pushed through the last patches of white crocuses, mostly purple and yellow against winter's retreat. Daddy, guess what? Emily bounced beside him. You got the lead role. She stopped. How did you know? Mrs. Patterson texted me. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. Will you come? Promise? Already promised. Already keeping it. She hugged his leg. I love you, Daddy. I love you too. They walked home together, and Daniel thought about the blizzard that had changed everything. The choice that had cost everything. The risk that had paid off in ways he never could have predicted. Life wasn't fair. Systems weren't just. But sometimes, when you stood firm on what mattered, the world rearranged itself around you. Not always, not even usually, but sometimes, and sometimes was enough. Across the city, Victoria Hawthorne sat in her office, reviewing employee satisfaction surveys. The numbers had improved. Not dramatically, but measurably. People were staying, smiling more, producing better work. Her phone rang. Her father. How's my favorite CEO? Charles asked. Learning, Victoria said. Still learning. That's all any of us can do. Listen, I'm having dinner with Daniel Brooks and his daughter tomorrow. Want to join us? Victoria hesitated. I don't want to intrude. You wouldn't be intruding. Emily's been asking about the fancy lady from the party. She wants to meet you properly. Victoria paused. Yes, I'd like that. Perfect. 7 o'clock. Nothing formal. Just dinner. After hanging up, Victoria sat back in her chair. Outside, the sun set over a city finally free of snow. Spring had arrived. Messy and chaotic and beautiful. She'd been the Ice Queen. She'd ruled through fear and precision and absolute control. But ice, she'd learned, was brittle. It looked strong right until it shattered. Water, though. Water was different. It flowed, adapted, found new paths when the old ones closed. Victoria Hawthorne was learning to flow. It wasn't natural, wasn't comfortable, but it was necessary, and maybe, just maybe, it was right. The following evening, Victoria arrived at Lou Malnati's pizzeria in jeans and a sweater, the most casual outfit she'd worn in public in years. Charles waved from a booth. Daniel sat beside him, and across from them, bouncing excitedly in her seat, was Emily Brooks. "Miss Hawthorne," Emily beamed. "Daddy said you're important." Victoria slid into the booth. "I don't know about that. He said you run a really big company. Do you have a corner office?" "I do." "Is it on the top floor?" 42nd floor. Emily's eyes widened. "That's so high. Can you see the whole city?" "On clear days, yes." "That's so cool." Emily turned to Daniel. "Daddy, can we visit sometime?" Daniel looked at Victoria, uncertain. Victoria surprised herself by saying, "Absolutely. I'd love to give you a tour." They ate deep dish pizza. Emily chattered about her upcoming musical. Charles told embarrassing stories about Victoria's childhood. Daniel laughed more than Victoria had ever seen in 9 years of employment. At one point, Emily leaned across the table conspiratorially. "Miss Hawthorne, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course. Daddy was really sad when he stopped working at your company. But then he got a new job, and now he's happy again. Happier than before, even." Victoria's throat tightened. "I'm glad he's happy. Are you happy?" The question stopped her cold. When was the last time anyone had asked her that? "I'm working on it," Victoria said honestly. Emily nodded sagely. Sometimes working on it is enough. After dinner, they walked Emily to the park across the street. She ran to the swings, demanding that Daniel push her super high. Victoria and Charles stood watching. "She's wonderful," Victoria said. "She is. Daniel's done an incredible job raising her. I almost ruined that, but you didn't. You learned instead. That's what matters." Victoria watched Emily soar higher, her laughter echoing across the playground. "Do you think change is possible, Dad? Real change?" "I think you're proof of it, sweetheart. I'm trying. That's all anyone can do. Keep trying. Keep learning. Keep remembering that business is just people serving people. The rest is details." Emily jumped off the swing mid-arc, landed in the sand, and ran to Victoria. "Miss Hawthorne, want to see me do the monkey bars?" "I'd love to." She followed the 7-year-old to the playground equipment. Watched her cross the bars with fierce determination. Tongue between her teeth, same expression she'd worn pouring orange juice months ago. When Emily reached the end, she dropped down triumphantly. "Did you see? You were amazing. Daddy says if you practice, you can do anything. Your daddy's a smart man. The smartest." Emily hugged Victoria's leg. "I'm glad you came to dinner. You're nice." Victoria blinked back unexpected tears. "Thank you, Emily. You're pretty nice, too." They stayed at the park until the sun set, painting the sky purple and gold. Daniel and Emily walked home one direction, Victoria and Charles another. "You okay?" Charles asked. "Yeah," Victoria said. "I think I actually am." She drove home through spring streets, windows down, city sounds flowing through the car. Tomorrow she'd return to Hawthorne Capital, to spreadsheets and meetings and quarterly projections. But she'd remember this night. Remember a 7-year-old's wisdom. Remember that change was possible.